talk to you about shot shell reloading today. And I know that a lot of you probably don't know, a shotgun from a shot class, but we're going to cover a lot of ground so you know what we're talking about before we get to this actual reloading process. For those of you that might be a little bit nervous when it comes to anything to do with guns, we're not using anything explosive, flammable, volatile, or toxic. And anything we hand around you can touch, but we will hand it around in cups. And we have hand cleaner for afterwards. While Caleb's getting that ready, any of you that have talked to me for any length of time have probably found out that I'm an avid outdoorsman and an avid hunter. And I started when I was about 7 years old, hunting with my relatives. But I started carrying a gun when I was 12. You have to take a hunter safety course, and you have to be 12 to take the course. When I graduated my hunter safety course, we celebrated by going skeet shooting, the whole class. And our instructor reloaded his own shot shells, and he provided the shells. So we took our own shotguns, and he provided the shells, and apparently he had made some mistakes in his hand loading. And when I took my turn at the skeet ring, the gun blew up in my face because he had overloaded the shell. Now at the time, I didn't have a clue that you could even reload shot shells. I had no idea what had happened. But luckily, I didn't get hurt, neither did anyone else. That's the gun that blew up on me. I was the same age he is when that happened. Well, I wanted to know why it happened. I wanted to understand it. So my uncle took me home. He had a reloader a lot like this one, and he sat me down, and we went through the process of reloading some shot shells. And when we reloaded the shot shells, he told me what he had thought had gone wrong. I've been reloading shot shells ever since. Most of the shells I've fired in my lifetime have been shells I reloaded myself. And we're going to run through a little bit of firearms history for you guys so that you can understand exactly what I'm talking about by the time we get to we actually get to the reloading process. Gunpowder was an accidental discovery. There were Chinese alchemists that were trying to make gold out of less valuable materials, like lead and pocket lid or whatever else they could make gold out of that was inexpensive. And it didn't work, but they came up with a lot of other products like gunpowder. And when they did, the inventors went to work finding new ways to use the discoveries. And they came up with a lot of uses for gunpowder we still have today, including firearms. This was in the 14th century, and we have pictures from that far back that show vase-like objects shooting projectiles, which we assume are the first firearms. Now, at first they were really crude, as you can see. They were, there was no way to aim them. There was a cannon on a stick that a guy actually touched a flaming fuse to light it off. And the guy shooting this was probably in more danger than whoever he was shooting it at. They got better. They improved it. And that ignition system was one of the first things they improved. They took that fuse and made it mechanical. So when you pulled the trigger, it dropped the fuse into a pan of gunpowder. Now, the improvement here is that you could shoulder this and sight down the barrel so you could actually aim it in a general direction. The downside was you're lighting a pan of gunpowder inches from your nose. So they progressed even farther. They got rid of the lit fuse. This is a flintlock. This pan here would be full of gunpowder. It had an improvement with a pan that had the gunpowder had a cover on it, and this is called the frizzen. It's like a nail file. When this was fired, the flint would strike the frizzen, make sparks, open the pan, and drop sparks into the gunpowder. Again, you still had a pan of gunpowder right next to your face. Now, somewhere along the line, someone invented fulminate of mercury, and that's a percussive explosive. That means that when it's struck, it blows up. If any of you had cap guns when you were kids, that was fulminate of mercury. Little snapping pops that you throw and they go bang, that's fulminate of mercury. It's the same thing. But the firearms manufacturers realized that they filled a little copper cup with fulminate of mercury and placed it on top of a post that had a direct channel into the barrel that they could use it to light off the powder charge. And this is a percussion cap rifle. This was the next stage of ignition improvements. And I've used rifles just like this my whole life during black powder season. They're still in use today. The gunpowder was crude too. This was black powder. It made a lot of smoke and a lot of flash. This flash is created by unburnt powder leaving the barrel. The smoke is real sulfurous, and obviously it was, a big detractor. They have smokeless powder now, and you can see it makes a lot less smoke, and there's almost no flash. This was one of the modern improvements. And somewhere along the line, there were a couple schools of thought that came up about firearms. One school of thought that we ought to be using one single projectile being fired out of the gun. That was really hard with a smoothbore firearm because they weren't very accurate. The bullets would tumble, and beyond about 50 yards, you just didn't have any accuracy until they invented the rifled barrel. A rifled barrel would actually put a spin on the projectile so that it stabilized in flight like a football. When you put a spin on a football, it flies point first. And it's the same theory here. And what happened was this extended the range of rifles way beyond what they were before. Now the other school of thought was that if you put enough projectiles into one shot, one of them is bound to hit the target. And this is where the theory of shotguns came from. Go ahead and hand that out. And this is you guys have probably seen the picture of the pilgrim hunting the turkey with a blunderbuss. This is a blunderbuss. It's a smoothbore. It's basically the predecessor of modern shotguns. Now there was still both a nuisance to load. You still had to pour the powder down the barrel, then you had to put something in the barrel to separate the powder and the projectile. Go ahead and hand that water out. They used to use felt, they used to use paper, all kinds of things. This is a shotgun wad that we're handing around. This is what we use now. It's made out of plastic. And they got better at that too. When they came out with a modern cartridge, everything was all contained in one cartridge. You had your ignition source, which is a primer now instead of a cap. You had the powder, you had the shotgun wad, or in the rifle you don't need a separator, and you had the projectiles, and they were all in a cartridge, so you could fire the cartridge, remove it, put a new cartridge in, and you were reloaded. And that's pretty much how it stands today. And people realized that both those methods, both those conflicting concepts had their own uses. The rifle was great for things that you couldn't get real close to. Things that were too alert to get close to, or things you really didn't want to be close to when you shot at. The rifle gave you the ability to keep your distance. The shotgun was great for things that moved too quickly to aim at accurately, so you could use a shotgun to hit something that was moving rapidly or that was a small target.